But so you both are okay with being recorded?
Yeah. I don't know if I gave you my right because I haven't gotten it yet. Did I go 3 hits? Yeah. A-Y-A-N. 888, yeah. What's going on? Oh, you're using Eli's email?
Yeah.
Oh, wait, that's so confusing. Okay.
Sorry.
I was like, why is Eli doing that? Sorry. We just... Where's your... okay. Yeah, you're good. Sorry.
Okay. Everyone ready? Personal identity reduction is true. 1. Brain studies use no continuous identity of the brain and create 2 spheres of consciousness. Perfect 84. Human beings have 2 upper hemispheres connected by fibers. Surgeons have cut these fibers. The consequence was 2 spheres of consciousness affected revealed by various psychological tests. When someone's hemispheres have been disconnected, psychologists can present 2 written questions and receive 2 different answers by the 2 person's hands. And 2. Fission. Brain transplants prove there's no metaphysically unified agent. Perfect 84. I could survive with only half my brain. My body is fatally injured with the brains of my 2 brothers. My brain is divided. Each half is translated to the body of one of my brothers. Personal identity is not what matters. If man was permanently divided, its half would be developed in different ways. It become less possible. In the case involves one person. They could not live at opposite ends of the earth. They might fail to recognize each other. It cannot be true that I believe to be a stranger is in fact another part of myself. And reductionism justifies utilitarianism. Grosky 86. The reductionist view strongly supports utilitarian account of body, brain, and events are more than one person. Utilitarianism treats person as fundamental existence while grounding on happiness. Utilitarian reflects the nature of person as much possible than previously recognized. Competitors util presupposes it separate from the body, brain, and metaphysical events. These view error being too personal. When we cease to believe that the personal existing entities, util becomes more plausible if its competitors. Thus, the standard is maximizing expected well-being. You should default to util. If I win defense on their standard, we nationally want to make the world better. Sit out in Armstrong 14. People will begin with the presumption that we ought to make the world better. The question is whether any moral constraints should be added to basic consequential factor. No objection reveals the need for anything beyond consequences, and consequences determine what is morally right and wrong. Advantage 1 CMRs. Decreased involvement has created a growing divide between civilians and military. Empirical studies and polls prove done to 17 as the U.S. engaged in the longest period of conflict on the backs of a very small portion of the population. Distance between the military and its people fueled the public's ignorance. Military forces relied on special operations. The public largely disengaged and unaware of service. Disconnected to even new or unforeseen. Studies found a dramatic decrease in military structure at the end of the Cold War, significantly decreased the military's footprint, leading to distribution of the nation and its military. 2017, the distance is more pronounced than ever. On questions ranging from service, the majority of respondents indicate that they simply did not know. And contractors are responsive to troop overstretch and a lack of successful recruitment in Iraq proves Clock 7. PMC presence in Iraq provides a stopgap for overstretched forces. The army fell short of recruitment goals by 25%. The strain has caused a dearth of force. Strength underscored for the need for more power. And defense contractors are terrible. They use excessive force and are concerned about civilian casualties and are immune to law. Gomez del Prado 08. PMC personnel can use excessive force and shoot indiscriminately, resulting in civilian casualties. PMC employees have forbidden arms or experimental ammunition. Contractors often circulate without identification, behaving similar to death squads. Would also detain Iraqis without authorization. Outsourcing the security function, danger, and losing state control. By Order 17, contractors immune from prosecution. The PMCs often operate outside government control and limited oversight from state organs. And in the status quo, marginalized people are forced to join the military by economic necessity. Conscription is inevitable. The question is whether it occurs across discriminatory lines. Sandal 2K. Conscription allocates service without markets. The volunteer armies that job performed in exchange for money. Background conditions prevail. Economic disadvantage are widespread. The choice to buy or serve may reflect the lack of alternatives. Those who fail to buy the way are conscripted by economic necessity. The composition of the American army seems to bear this objection. African Americans make up 20%. Military service should not be allocated by the labor market. All citizens have an obligation to serve. And compulsory national service empirically decreases mass support for war. Horowitz and Lewalski 11. Public support for war depends on experimental conditions. We see a large effect of conscription. Moving from all volunteer to army decreases support by 17%. Conscription by increasing perceived cost of war decreases mass support for war. Decision to conscript rather than just variations of level expected casualties drives results. We use regression to analyze data. Control barriers will include prior service, gender, Hawkins partisanship, Asian income, consistent with the hypothesis 1. Reducing the draft decreases support. The draft always has a large effect on attitudes toward conflict. It is experimental manipulation rather than democratic attitudes that drive support. We can also test the underlying self-mechanism. Young people come more strongly opposed to the conduct when the draft is reinstated, reducing the draft decreases the probability of support by 23%. When they have told the cost of fighting, not only does the draft decrease public support for war, also does for the reason we articulate self-interest. And it half solves. Citizen army means we no longer need defense contractors. Daily cost 15. Everyone would be involved with the military, making it harder to go to war. Much of skepticism would be injected in the military. It would curb militarism. It would be less expensive. It would be a dagger in the heart of defense contractors and mercenary groups, making the citizen army while most are not for a career. Advantage 2 is the Air Force. Despite increased incentive pay, Air Force pilot shortages will continue to grow. Apollo 17. The Air Force is increasing incentive pay, but retired pilots will only fill 25 open positions. The Air Force is suffering large losses due to the commercial industry. The hiring of military pilots is going at a very high rate in the airlines. The service was 1,500 pilots short by 2016. The deficit is expected to grow. And airlines depend on the Air Force as a pipeline for qualified pilots. Ever seen 15 commercial airlines look at Air Force pilots? They want to hire them. Airlines will 20,000 pilots over the next 10 years. World aviation companies see the Air Force as the avid way to staff their conflicts. Airlines want experienced airline mechanics. The promise of well-paying jobs with good benefits are attractive to prospective pilots. Major airlines will hire an average 2,000 pilots per year. The average Air Force pilots at a relatively young age is one big job for the airlines. Mobility pilots are projected to go from pilot attraction. The loss of fighter pilots will hurt the Air Force even more. And airlines will need a huge infusion by personnel by 2035. Institutional hurdles are out of the way. Apollo 17. The next 20 years, airline companies will need 1,117 new pilots. Air Force has met with civilian corporations. The groups established debt relief, alternative pathways, accelerated timelines. And shortages cause root cuts and caused bankruptcy. All-Star 17. Many leave the profession, particularly in retirement and U.S. agencies. The coming retirement exceeds U.S. active regional airline pilots. Acute shortage may wreak havoc on air travel, grounding pains, and reducing air service from subsidies. Republic Airways filed bankruptcy because it was grounding aircraft due to lack of pilot resources. And airlines are already taking billions in subsidies. They are on the brink of collapse. 11-17. Sucking at billions in public subsidies, the industry teeters on the brink of insolvency. The big shift has taken a big hole in economic growth over the last 5 years. Service fell by 18%, and industry measure of capacity. The major airlines have copied each other in raising fares, imposing new fees, or eliminating service. It seems doubtful our government will let a giant private monopoly suffocate regional airlines. In perpetuity growth strategies suggest that they're not going to stop on their own volition. And airlines prop up American trade, tax revenue, and tourism key to global economy. Oxford 11. Air transport lies at the heart of global business. Travel and tourism contribute $376.7 billion to the U.S. Air freight is fast and reliable. Working distances. The study has also shown a critical asset the U.S.'s air transport network is to business and wider economy. It provides a key infrastructure on which modern globalized businesses depend. Tax revenues from aviation are substantial. U.S. aviation companies paid $54.7 billion in direct taxes. Aviation provides significant economic benefits to the U.S. economy and its citizens, which are unique and essential to modern economies. And econ collapse causes great power war. Taunus and 15. Interdependence raises the cost of conflict. Unbalanced dependencies generate increased risk of military conflict. If leaders seriously anticipate their own nation's decline, they may blame external dependence appear to anti-foreign sentiments, contemplate forces, and refuse to be deterred by nuclear arms. If a shift could happen abruptly, that changes the world economy, although the circumstances in a way that render interstate peace more precarious. This would have consequences. Great powers might gamble into cyber war, conventional war, and global economic decline risks nuclear war. Merlini 17. Scenarios for future of the world order illustrate possibilities. One or more acute tensions apparent today evolves into open conflict between states, perhaps invoking use of nuclear weapons. The crisis might be triggered by collapsed global economy system, the vulnerability of which we have experienced, with consequences for peace similar to those of the first. Unlimited exercise of self-interest and rejection of the outside interference would likely be amplified. And this is the only comparative evidence in the debate. Healthy airline industries are directly correlated with stable economies. Florida 12. Evidence confirms that good line airline service is an important factor in urban economic demands. Airports move people as opposed to cargo. Airports move two types of things, goods and people. Economic development has focused on moving things and industries that go around them, the ability to move and generate knowledge. Airports have a bigger effect on economic development by moving people as opposed to cargo. The number of airport passengers per capita is associated with higher metropolitan economic outlook. Airport activity is significantly associated with regional wealth and productivity. Airports play a substantial role on economic growth and development of cities and regions. The most precarious cargo they move is people. Thus, I affirm it's an open for cross-sex.
Can you say that?
Yeah.
Thank you. Alright, let me refresh. Okay. Alright, can we go to the Sandel 12 arguments about, like, explain to me this economic, like,
Okay,
this
so
not
right
occurring,
now,
I don't know
people
what it
who
means.
cannot afford to get educational schooling or can afford to pursue like job training join the military out of economic necessity, meaning that because it is the only viable like opportunity that they have presented in the status quo.
So
it means
is
they
that a
can-
bad thing or a good thing that they're like only ways to join an army to make money?
Well, right
Like,
now,
feed their
in the
families?
context of the first advantage, it's a bad thing because it contributes to the otherization of the military. So right now we see because such a small portion of the population that is disproportionately.
Wait, so like the
represented-
1AC just doesn't ignore why they're just using the military, instead chooses to favor.
The reason why military is like dangerous or is bad is because there are things like otherization of the military, which will.
What does that mean?
When we don't connect and we separate and otherize people who serve the government and who
Oh,
fight
okay,
in
that makes
conflict.
sense. So there's like there's a stigma to joining the military to make money.
It's not even that there's a stigma, it's that the only people who have to join the military to make money are people who live in
So
one
like,
family.
but do you think that it's a problem that these people, their only source of income is joining the military? Does the 1AC identify that as a structural issue, or it's simply that there's a discrimination when they do it?
Well,
So like when
it
people do
is-
drugs, is there like a stigma to smoke weed, or there's a reason why they're smoking weed?
Well,
That is
the
the
1AC takes a two-layered answer to that question. One, it
What is
says
the
that
two-layer?
it's. I will explain. One, the first layer is that the reason why it is so dangerous for people to join the army and military when there's no other necessity is because we see otherization, which means that they're going to be commodified and exploited by the government. That's Dempsey 17.
Okay, let's go to the Dempsey 17 impact.
Sure.
Where is that in the
It's the first card in the first advantage.
decreased involvement has growing divide? Yeah, but where do we see like disenfranchisement and like these sort of things?
Okay,
that you're talking
so,
about? It's not in the card.
Yeah, so you're going to want to look to daily costs 15 that says when people are involved in the military, it allows us to protest and dissent war instead of fighting. And also you can look to the additional warrant is in Horowitz and Lewandowski.
Why does a
Talks about
citizen
how-
army mean we no longer need defense contractors?
Because the reason why we feel like we need to fight wars, the reason why we have things like militarist culture in the status quo is because the otherization of the military means that we cannot connect with
So
it.
anyway, is there like a
Policies.
militarism impact to the CMR advantage?
Yeah.
Okay. Like can it be more fleshed out than just saying like a solvency card, having like one word on talking about the military? Like, how's that a military?
Well, I think the way that the app solves for this CMRs and PMCs is by addressing like the root cause of militarism.
Has this cultural shift happened empirically before?
I can provide empirical reasons and what reason has happened.
Let's go to the airlines argument. Your last Florida 12 card talks about like their evidence of stable economies. So the economy will be unstable, but why would it lead to collapse?
Okay, so you're going to want to look to,
I don't want to look at any other cards, I just want to look at that
There's really good warrants to this. So one, off of Florida, you're going to want to look to the story of the second advantage, which says that right now we see airlines are on the blink because of the lack of bodies. Like, they have tried to incentivize pilots, but the lack of qualified people are low. And so they're taking billions of dollars in subsidies. And because airlines play such a crucial part on taxation, travel, and like cargo and industry, it's a key infrastructure. It's devastating to the economy for them to continue losing by 2035. My evidence is good on this.
Okay. I don't need prep. The order's going to be one off in case. On case, it's just top down. That's what I'm thinking. Wait, is this round 6? This round, okay. Alright. Can I approach this?
Yeah, of course.
Sorry. So, yeah, one-off case, and then framing, and then the CMR page, and then
Can we send it?
yeah.
Okay, I'll let you know when I get it.
Good? Is everyone ready? The first officer critique U.S. constrained positions of blacks in opposition to civil society, anti-black, demarcation, selective service, approved. This is Lawrence 71, modern selective, a system reflects the racist character of American society in general, areas that institutional racism in the U.S. selective service serves as an underpinning racism which portrays American society, U.S. armed service discriminating against blacks, selective service head job, securing merit part discriminatory armed forces, states the legal rights of Negroes seem to overlook through administrative policy, national emergency, which necessitates the legal rights of Negroes must be overlooked, selective service, classified as white, all rich except those who are Negro or part Negro, and whiteness reconstitutes itself through a relationship to a future structured by apocalyptic fear, the threat of white crisis lost in an effective attachment to whiteness and functions as a governing mechanism that upholds white supremacy. This is Baldwin 12. Any policy seeking to challenge whiteness may benefit by analyzing how the future is invoked in the articulation of whiteness. The truth of apocalypse, prophecy, hope, fear, and potentiality shape their present rights are suspended to safeguard against future events, catastrophe, and tailored. The future is employed as a virtual because it never be ever actualized as the future. A permanent virtuality discourses of futurity, white supremacy, uniform nationalism, deliberate humanity discourses of white crisis are shaped by notions of futurity. The futures and important sites to which individual societies are governing through the future by targeting to reconfigure all forms of whiteness. In fact, shapes white racial confirmation. Why does the military system, why does the world, we frame it by claiming that the only ethical options that should call for the end of the world, calling attention to the attack to undergird the U.S. is only to just conflict within like the 1AC. We cannot resolve anti-blackness with the state because of institutional acting activity makes anti-blackness worse because it raises the existence of the black body. The state forecloses the possibility of humanity for those in non-human position at Wilson 10. The only ethical ground is available to modern policy to draw attention about which space and time are used by franchise and violent power of leadership, but to violate other rights to monitor the world's capacity to think, act, and exist spatially and temporally. They would have to be crazy to call not merely the world of actions to count, but also the world itself and to count the world and its impurity, extremity, practice, the world itself and escalate. The world passive virus slaves, inclination disputed, and select inclination that does not have a bigger kind of water to make of a world that responds to the most lucid nation with ethics with violence repaired to demolish subject to these late two simple senses for sure of U.S. and global antagonism would be this man unethical, modernity would no longer sound like an oxymoron body, and their economy argument relies on the exploitation of black body that devalues them as objects in civil society and tries to assimilate them into civil society as told this is Barchesi. And Western modernity relied on a moralistic understanding of civilization that represented Africans falling short of humanity guaranteed by whiteness, legalization of African trade, leads and regulation for employment and capital, could not bridge the chasm between privileges and values and the hierarchies of equality and oppression that actually predicted ultimately impossible for labor recognition of human dignity and aging with structure of social relations that makes blackness as less than human condition humans and universal white civil societies, just finding explanation not white words for this idea of labor and if slavery and personal rejection went hand in hand with policy shared between black bodies and producers of capital and civil society, maps itself on recognition of rights through freedom, the position of and the blackness constructed benevolently hegemony and created what is needed is the radical inject the society's incoherence, the wretched earth, the politics of the black body, just towards the configuration of society's Wilson 3. The slavery is greatest liberal black social position, allies, spaces as a position, architecture, and emotion. Our president works on the grammar of hegemony, threat was incoherence, no other body so completely represented, complete disorders of black society of absolute dereliction. The black body functions as a map of gratuitous violence to where society is absent for which violence is contingent. Black society of absolute dereliction. Whoever says rape is black, whoever says prison is black, whoever says AIDS is black, and Negro is a phobogenic object. Whoever trying to pass without heritage, the map of all opposition society there is usually anti-black, and the alternatives to call for the end of the world, burn it down. It's an unintelligible, impossible vision. So be it fear of violence is conservative. Literally, the question of whether or not the violence will be adjusted as an unjust social order. This is Wilson 10. Given the social violence case reproduces late violence as a structure of black lives as opposed to violence as a many factors you conclude consideration of what is to be done for non or to start the end of the world is the only thing worth starting to shift from pyroculture to horticulture to pyrotex about the mind devastation and reconstruction to a conclusion fall free you. However unwitting to for non-trees of undoing, however impossible for its own sake, roadmap to freedom so extent they would free us from the epistemic air we breathe in. The role of the judge to vote for debate, the best methodology breaks down anti-blackness is the framing issue. They refuse to engage in anti-blackness will lose the debate, also fee us illusory. The plan will never happen in riddle. It's a question of how we frame blackness, not framing. There is no impact to your framing. Extinction has already happened for black bodies that are tortured, enslaved, and status quo. Any risk of offense to critique of our ontology argument outweighs the act as omaladi. It is a nuclear war of the U.S. and Soviet Union. 25 to 100 would be killed. This is an approximately same number of African people died between 1490 and 18, as well as the African slave trade. Any war for people of color. The world ended centuries ago. Our world, the death culture we live in, has many war willing Germans survived because they struggle for liberty and peace with dignity. And nuclear disarmament has become a safe issue when it's only linked to when it is not linked to the daily and historic issues of race and market cardinalization. And their framework is probably a new link to a creative for close to the possibility of radical anti-racist progress. We have to recognize that all notions of American progress function over the backdrop of anti-blackness is parasitic towards the slave. This is also impact turned into framework because they fail to acknowledge the specificity of blackness. Particularly, they say win defense on their status, and that's a reason to presume act. But we will question what does it mean to be we. That is a humanist response that links to our argument. Now, to CMR advantage, there is no division between the military and the Bali party. The thesis of critique is that civil society is the military that exists with this objection of blackness, meaning that there is no division within itself. This is a non-unique argument. It's just the thesis of our critique, and larger standing armies actually make violence more likely. Kern's case to Sullivan 14, preparation for release to war, self-defense is a lie that makes aggressive war possible, making standing armies acceptable. Standing armies are the cause of aggressive war. Armies created under the guise of defense becomes offensive armies without realizing once you have a standing army, somebody's going to see it. Standing armies are like carnivorous beasts that want to stay alive, provocatively, eternally, and so to prevent other nations do harm, and no public support for the planned veterans and the public is modern 15. Mentality of civils and address of an overwhelming negative. More than 8 in 10 9/11 veterans have requested the U.S. should not return to draft at this time. And the AF supports as for the national military increases the likelihood of the United States profession going anywhere. This banned out 12. The widespread use of guardians to achieve political impact. People committed to communities, lost people, but Bush pursued this misguided building missions in Iraq and Afghanistan. The Vietnam War prevented that a draft includes a government of virtually limitless power supply, which keep fighting even increasingly unpopular with heavy casualty, more than 10 times the number of dead in Iraq. It took years before opposition to Vietnam era reached critical levels. Washington had no difficulty in things forcing continuing war. To reduce willingness to Americans to volunteer has an immediate impact on the military. Government officials recognize that volunteers can stop an unpopular way, but not just signing up, now the econ advantage. Economic atomic decline doesn't call nuclear war. As Dresner, 12 analysts started the financial crisis lead to great power conflicts. Peacefulness in 2012, the same as 07 interstate violence. Accurate data such as other wise studies confirm that Great Britain has not triggered any violent conflict given security or proper community suppression. But by that standard, the outcome looks spread. And even if the decline causes conflict, leaders won't use, for instance, Jervis 11. Even if the extreme version of trades and liberty concern, it's hard to see why leaders would believe their country would get profit from attacking others. The very fact that we've seen a sharp downturn without any suggesting the forces that even in bad times, economic conflict will not make war thinkable, and no war statistical studies prove this. Miller 2K concluded the conventional impact of economic crisis after studying 93% of economic crisis in 22 countries. Concluded the conventional impact of growing severity bore no relation to complexion. You tell them this is also particularly in cross-examination when I asked them about the 412 carbon. Even your tagline talks about, even you tag your line as it's, airlines are key to stable economies. Does not mean it'll lead to economic collapse. And let's go quickly back to the CMR advantage. Representations of future nuclear war rests on racist fear of irrational non-whites. The bomb is the epitome of the structural capacity of whiteness, naturalizing structural violence to the projection of spectaculation. This was read on their econ advantage, but turns their CMR advantage of preventing wars because it's your representations of extinction that are uniquely problematic and drive things like Iraq, which turns case. Do you want me to delete whatever?
Yes, please.
Yeah, of course. It's really just didn't read the Williams 11 card. Didn't read the Hasbrock 16s. I'll just Yeah, but there's 2 cards.
it's 7.
Okay, I'll let you know.
Yep. Did you get it?
Hold on. Okay, yeah. Okay, process.
Yeah.
So starting on your framework arguments, can you explain the impact turn?
Sure.
On the framework?
Your argument is like the standard is maximizing maximizing expected well-being,
Okay.
and like we naturally want to make the world better, right? This is an Armstrong 14 card.
Okay.
Our argument is that one, we will like question like who is we in that claim, but also your version of progress is like controlled in a world that is predicated on anti-blackness. Hence,
Okay.
that such
Sure.
progress
Okay.
will be anti-black. So
And then,
it's a silly argument.
On the argument, the Band of 12 card, what's the warrant of how it like increases like institutional oppression?
For
Band of card.
which
It's
one?
tagged as national service, militaries are not enslaves people of color, and those impoverished all over again.
No, I read the other Bando card.
Okay, so
I just said that like historically, like Vietnam is like a perfect example of this.
and then
More soldiers,
you make
it's just more
okay,
war,
sure.
right?
And then you
Like-
make a representations argument. How are
Yeah.
representations valued in this debate?
Sure. It wasn't read under the CMR advantage, which is like CMR prevents like global war,
Yeah, I
but it was
understand.
read on the econ advantage.
Yeah, I understand.
So we will say like if the 1AC was like passed hypothetically with like these are the advantages to it, like that sort of logic probably is like fallacious to your like CMR advantage,
Okay,
right? Because
so
like
you read a role of the ballot was to like
the role of the judge is to vote for the bidder that methodologically breaks down anti-blackness.
Okay, so then how does like the representations of nuclear war, how's that offense under your role of the ballot?
We would probably like impact her in a nuclear war scenario. What would you, like that's the whole point of reading our Omalati evidence, right?
Okay.
Like I don't
Never
think
mind. Okay.
I think you're misunderstanding. Like our argument is like that's just like an indictment to the 1AC. Like
What stance does the K take on ontology?
Afro-pessimism is a political
Yeah,
position.
sure. So what is ontology?
Anti-blackness we believe is a political ontology as a result of like Wilson talks about as a
Okay,
result
what does
of
that
the
look
passage.
like, political ontology?
It looks like the Middle Passage, slavery, the prison industrial
sure.
complex,
So
like the
your
everything.
alternatives to burn it down. But
Like-
this is only a good idea if you win your ontology claim, correct?
we would most likely have to
If
win
you
our
lose
political ontology.
if you lose your ontology claim, can you still win the burn it down is a good idea?
If I lose, I mean, like it's not like a win or lose thing. We just think it's true, right? Like it's a like I don't know like what the point. Like it's not like if we win this, if we win X,
Okay,
we
what does
can't
it
win
look like
this.
to burn it down? What does the end of the world look like?
Yeah, that's a part of our argument. Is something that is uniquely unintelligible because it is something incoherent. But we believe that is what blackness is, right? Like so, we in this context to the AF call for an epistemological question, like how we know things, and that's how it functions
Okay,
in this
so
round.
last
per se.
question: how do we derive theories of ontology? How does Wilderson conclude an ontology?
Wilson uses parts of Fernandian psychoanalysis. He uses history. He uses originally Orlando Patterson's work on like when he said that like slavery is not just about labor oppression, but it was also a question of social death. Because I could go on all about like these are generic questions.
Just cross it.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't. Yeah. Oh, you just sent it?
Hold on, let's see. Okay, the order is going to be case, starting on framework, first advantage, second advantage, okay. Tell me when you get it.
You sent it? Oh. Inbox.
It's called 2A1 for some reason, but it's the one.
You said framework, first advantage, second advantage, okay?
Yes.
I haven't got it. Oh, but you did send it.
Yeah.
Refresh. Two ER round robin.
Yeah, should be one. It's the one here.
Yeah. So that's just case top down and repeat.
Did you reply all?
I guess not. No, I didn't. My bad, I'm sorry. Everyone ready?
Yeah.
Okay. My opponent makes a major mistake this round. He only puts defense on case, which means that if I win his claims about ontology are a flaw, or are there's questions, I cause you to interrogate his questions about ontology, means that I win the round on framework. One, he argues that extinction has already happened. I'll answer this on the case page, but then he argues that utilitarianism is bad, and he tries to impact during this. However, even if utilitarianism is bad, discussing policy implementation is key to breaking down material injustices, and discussing things grounded in empirical reality is key, and he's missing the Wilderson TA. The only reason that we can derive theories of psychoanalysis and theories of what constitutes ontology is by analyzing history. He says this in process, which is that consequentialist approach grounded in empirical reality is a prerequisite to developing theories based on things like ontology, which means that even if you buy that utilitarianism is not perfect or that it is going to exclude some people, it doesn't mean that it's not a starting point for us to talk about material reform. And even if you buy that Wilderson or is going to utilitarianism and consequentialism is a prerequisite to interrogating things like ontology and developing and deriving theories like ontology. So even if utilitarianism is perfect, it's still the only way that we can do this around, because the only truth that we're ever going to actually be able to understand and meaningfully understand the operation of things like institutional injustice on the first advantage. One, he makes an argument that the large standing arguments, however, his evidence is not specific to the draft, that things like, even if it's the larger army, things like otherization can still happen, which means that this argument isn't kind of. And then two, on his no support argument, however, the dissent is a good thing. It's the only way that we can check protests against the government, and we can decrease the support of war. So even if people aren't so popular or don't support the plan, it doesn't mean that's not a good reason to do it, because it's going to allow us to dissent and decrease the amount of interventionist wars that we're fighting. And on his argument about how enslaved people, empirics are on my side, which is the dissent is going to, on no support, dissent, empirics are on my side, that people do not support a war, and is going to allow for massive dissent, and it's going to decrease the chances of war. Empirics are on my side, that's Horowitz and Fonsky. And his rep's bad. Even if you buy his argument that he makes here, it's still not a reason to vote, because it doesn't have any offense under our role of the ballot. So even if my representations are flawed, it's not a reason not to vote for the affirmative, because I'm the only one who's talking material and I've already established that policy implementation is key. On the second advantage, he only puts defense on here, and he says that's not going to lead to nuclear power. However, that doesn't mean that economy collapse is not a big thing. So the link chain of the second advantage is still true, which means that he doesn't put any offense on this, which means that if I win, that there's even a risk of economic collapse. Even if it doesn't lead to war, it's going to lead to a slew of other impacts, like low-income families are going to be hard for the most people are going to have a hard time finding jobs. Economic decline is still a bad thing, even if you buy his argument that doesn't lead to war. And I've warned that I specifically as to why airline travel is a good thing, and it's especially key things like taxation and tourism. The warrants in these cards are really good. So the app is abstracting away from instances of status quo onto the K. Asking for ethical adjudication of the ballot is catastrophic, placing Afro-pessimism and the effect of blackness into the sphere of ethical only extends white supremacist anthropology for this anti-black death occurred 2014. To say that racism is unethical, to say that it's outside ethical deliberation, to say it's meant by ethics to determine the relationship between human beings, call for ethical deliberation is a call to make the historical event of black humanity induced by money and the referendum of white nationalization of black death. Such deliberation only infers the white mind an opportunity to reset their social boundaries concerning black life conceptually mark the card. And the ontology of blackness reduces the movement of the winning to now denying its qualities verb. There is no such thing as ontology. The method confuses the inscription of difference as a concept for indifference itself. This has disastrous effect for our performance. Afro-pessimism ontology is only used to put blackness in a box so that it can either be assimilated or exterminated in 1894. From verb to noun means the ratio of blackness and the domain of action, its ability to act suggest by verb, closed up by the hypothesis, paralysis, and extension of the noun. Culture is three territories, and that this movement is verb to noun is a strategy of culture, political entertainment. Such alienation as a reputation of segregation is an important difference. This repetition reinscribes the forced segregation of blacks to create a detailatorization mark the card. And We're not the state or law affirmation making demands on the state and questioning current methods works outside the political order, questions of legitimacy, unlinks myself from decay. Newman 10, demands on the state does not mean working within the state or reaffirming legitimacy. Demands are made from outside the political order. They implicitly call into question the legitimacy and sovereignty of the state by highlighting fundamental state practices and parentology. Afro-pessimism over-determines blackness as parentology that conflates white pathologization as blackness within the possibility of lives experience of black people. Black science and understanding black life as a black experience is a refutation of Afro-pessimist core assumption. Ontologizing blackness destroys lived experience, mode and aid. The parentological stream is that the launching of life and death performance is horribly and misunderstood as black studies might be described the location of habitually lost and found within moving tendency when along the side, and one is how utopia came to be submerged and understood. The outskirts of fierce and urgent now optimism doesn't require the representation of that relationship. It always lives in the powerful and in the resistance of the rigid. Black optimism persists in thinking that we have a need and we can get there. So the entire case is based on this claim of ontology. However, ontology is a myth and just pathologizes blackness and kills any chance, which prefer my the parentology DIR here is very good. It's just going to kill any liberation strategies and pathologize blackness only in context of whiteness and deny the existence that blackness can exist as apart from whiteness, which means it's going to preclude the social life within social death and the ability to create intimate relationships and cultural relationships even in a world where things like oppression can exist.
I have 5 minutes. What is para-ontology?
It's like, as a result of propagating this idea of ontology, it's going to cement things like ontology.
Oh, okay.
The performance.
So what is the Nielsen 98 argument? It's not indicted to Wilderson's ontology claim, but it just says there's no ontology in itself. Explain that. What does that mean?
Okay, so when you ontologize blackness, ontology itself is like a myth. It like doesn't exist because it strips.
Why does it not exist?
Because it strips like identity from all contexts except in relationship to like white identity. So Wilderson's theories on ontology necessarily require and limit like black existence in context to things like white supremacy. However, in reality, this is not the case because obviously things like identities that deviate from like normative whiteness can exist like independent from whiteness. Does that make sense?
Where's the warrant to the Curry tagline? If you just highlight like you can't align with like ethics, but where does it indict?
Ethical adjudication card?
Yes, like.
Okay, so asking for ethical deliberation is like it's actually asking like for like dominant structures.
Wouldn't Curry like not vote F like because he's like not a fan of like ethical frameworks like util?
Well, Curry
also
actually
doesn't make sense to me.
Curry would affirm in this instance because well, I guess I theorize because I don't really know, but he would like affirm that talking about material consequences and consequentialism is key, and that ideal theory abstracts away from actual instances.
I just want you to point out to me a warrant for the tagline in Curry 14. This is not.
Calling for ethical deliberation is a call to make the historical event of black.
You're rereading the card.
I'm reading the warrant of the card.
Explain.
Is that okay?
Yeah, go.
Historical event of black inhumanity introduced by modernity, the referent of white rationalizations about black death. Such deliberation only offers the white mind the opportunity to reassert the social boundaries constraining black life conceptually.
This is the In Fiat or Dreams article. It has nothing to do with Afro-pessimism.
Actually, it does because it says when we like use theories and when we use postulations and like ideological standpoints to describe the totality of oppression, it's always going to fail and it's never going to be able to escape like the boundaries of like normative ethics. Does that make sense? for?
It's going to be an overview.
Are there any new cards?
Yeah, I'm watching that.
Alston downstairs, right?
Oh, yeah.
Just confirming and things are moving.
Yeah,
Good deal. Thank you.
Is round 6 out?
Yes, sir. That's how I know about your round.
All right.
Yeah, so it's going to be an overview, case, and then the critique. Critique, I flow the dump top down. Yeah.
I'm sorry, you said what?
Yeah, big overview, case.
And the overview is going to be on what?
You
Case
can
or-
probably flow it on case.
Okay.
Yeah.
Overview, case, critique.
The overview on the case.
There's going to be like overview on case,
Should I just phone on
framing.
Is
You
the
can do whatever
overview
you.
long?
Yeah, you can set up. It's not that long, and then the critique, and then there's going to be another overview. But I'll try to make it quick.
Okay. And you sent it?
Yeah.
Did you reply all?
I didn't get it either, so.
I just sent it to Eli. Oops. You guys I just forwarded it to you.
Did you get it?
Sorry.
Did everyone get it yet?
Yeah.
Is it okay if I get it? Let me see.
What do you
Oh yeah, what? Tell me when everyone's ready.
Okay.
We good?
Mm-hmm.
So it's overview, case, and then the critique.
The 1 year has done a lot of clever argument, but there's very little argument interaction, meaning we will function. The next question is whether you should vote affirmative. We just need a risk of offense on our ontologic argument for you to vote for the critique, because you have stated 3 major cases. One is the representation arguments, so I'll go on the line to line. I'll have your representation of extinction, specifically the conceded Baldwin 12 evidence. On your focus on apocalyptic impacts is bad for people of color, but 2, you have conceded the Bandel evidence that you increase likelihood for war. Empirics prove like Vietnam, and 3, you have conceded our Lord's evidence that we went on critique as a case turn. That so you have ignored the the history of like the draft, and i.e. how black people were always put in the front line. This is also material conditions. This add to the affirmative. This is also a reason why you should vote negative. Now on the line. First off, your material argument is silly. First off, this will be better written on the Afropest flow, but Afropest clearly has materialism impact. That is where we have identified this ontology claim as like the reason why, like the prison industrial complex, the reason why a black person killed almost every day by the police, the reason why black pathologists, these are things that you have not questioned me. We do have material impacts. Also, if we win our case turns, and we have even more material impacts on a case, and now your Utah argument is probably a link to our Baldwin evidence and the conceded Omalati evidence that is try or keep dying for the negative is not a question of burning it down. This one is a question of you care for a people of color. You said, quote, to highlight your 1 year, we could exclude some people, but at least it's the correct starting point. That is probably a reason for you to vote negative and kills accessibility. It's our whole point of our Baldwin evidence that you just want to be a comfort not only in the debate space, but in the real world with your plan. But people of color are always shifted from discussion. We will also probably turn, we will probably say Curry probably airs heavily more on the negative, that you are specifically with the conceded Lawrence 71 evidence that the historical, the history of the draft selected service always put black people in the front line, meaning we definitely have a material condition that's on case. You have conceded this argument, you have conceded argument, you have also conceded that, you have also conceded specifically the impact on Baldwin argument that this sort of discussion about focusing almost on ideal theory is probably the reason why you should vote negative. Your own Curry card, which I'll get to more on the K-flow, is from In Fiat of Dreams. He will definitely air heavily on the question of negative, especially the fact that you are literally conscripting all black people. Now, specifically on their first advantages, you have conceded the line by line the Sullivan 14 evidence that you make conflict more likely because empirics prove, like in Vietnam, you have a larger standing army. This is my whole point. You have extended stuff, but you have not done actually line by line interactions. We will not go for the Dolman 15 argument, but we will go for you can float on the Afro flow that there is actually no division between conceding the body politic and the military, which is the thesis of our critique. You have also conceded the representation is not just with how you represent a popular impact, which is bad for people of color, but your representation of extinction is probably an unending security logic that probably turns your war argument. You cannot detach these representations. You have not kicked out of these advantages, meaning you also hold the 1AC to a very high threshold. It's not a question of whether they solve or not, but whether they actually, A, make things better material for black people. You have conceded the Lawrence evidence that they, you put them in the front line, but B, whether or not that your representation of extinction, because you have conceded that fiat is illusory, the plan never happens, is whether or not you can solve for your big stick impacts in the first place. We will extend necessary case defense. You have conceded the Miller 2K argument on our analytics that 1, extinction of the economic class is never 2, but 2, your Florida 12 about stable economies is absolutely nonsense. That does not mean it will lead to economic collapse. It is pretty clear we're also winning a case debate, but a framing issue that the 1AR neglects. Now, the critique. Our arguments to the nature of black suffering, the gratuitous violence of slave endurance is tied to a loss of identity, the capacity to articulate oneself as a section with the terrain of humanism. In the middle passage, this constitution of violence has no just because the joy that the white subject receives from undoing violence of blackness exceeds utility. There is no reason for beyond a sadistic drive to shore up the walls of sovereign white substitution with the absolute unsovereignty of the black player. On the level of the real, the slave is magnetized to bullets, and on the level symbolic and with our imagination is again marked as AIDS, violence, and death. That's the conceded Wilson 10 argument that prove that political ontology definitely does exist. We will isolate 2 key conceded links into 1AR that also uniquely turns key independently if we are winning this ontology argument. The first is the Barchesi argument that the capitalist market is constituted of humanist grammars that construct the black body as socially less human. They are always the less human, meaning the firmness imagination of economic society's rhetoric of civilization that attempts to discipline and continue to make black people fungible. Your 1AR is probably an instance why our ontology argument is true. You have also, again, conceded the Baldwin and the Lawrence argument where just not only a representation is said to the firm, but also a materials in this. So given this, we will call a question not only whether the world is it, but whether world ever net predicated on social death. The alternative is impossible, but is a uniquely necessary demand. Lau on the line by line. Again, you have conceded the Lawrence evidence, which is a materials to your affirmative. Your Curry 14 is very silly because you have read a util argument and you have conceded like material to say that you put black people on the front lines and your representations are extremely white and your impacts are extremely white. So you will err negative in the question. You have also not this is also very important. You have not read a permutation in the 1AR, meaning we will always have a risk of offense from the Wilson 10 argument that there is some sort of black political ontology as a result of Mill's passage because of gratuitous suffering, death, the fact that they were natally alien and generous of that they are always disgraced. I mean, that is a probably reason for you to vote negative for presumption because there is no AF. Also, you say this Nelson 98 argument that is absolutely hysterical because even if our thesis now would be that even if that political ontology might not be fully selected, it acts in a way of political ontology that is also literally the starting point of the 1AR. Wilson would probably psychoanalyze how you said even if we exclude some people, it is the best starting point. It's not these sort of humanist grammars probably prove our argument. Also hold the 2AR to a very high threshold on why you vote absent of them conceding materials in this adds 2Ks. You say Newman 10 the weird not law affirmation. We are clearly making a civil society link here, but also it's not a question of their scenario playing forces people of color to defend state, which is also bad. Your Mona 8 on parallel ontology is an example of alternative. There's no reason why we can't have optimism and Afro-pessimism, like seeing, look, you conscript all black people and put them in front lines. That is bad. You have apocalyptic scenarios that always forefronts discussions and issues of people of color. There is a representation system, there's a material system to AF. You have not read a permutation. You've conceded the Wilson 10 argument. There's a risk our ontology argument is true. Vote negative.
You didn't read the cards.
Did not read the cards.
Okay. Okay. The order is going to be overview, AC framework, first advantage, and I'll answer the Reb's argument he made on the first advantage, and then K. Everyone ready? My opponent makes a major mistake. He says that ontology is the only way to win this debate, which means that I can disprove ontology, and he concedes my arguments about utilitarianism. So he considers his winning utilitarianism is predicated off the fact that he wins ontology, which means that if I prove that ontology is non-falsifiable or does not have lineageity, then utilitarianism is a prerequisite. He concedes that it's a prerequisite deriving theories of ontology and deriving theories of psychoanalysis. He says that Wilderson derives his theories from looking at history, which means that if I can prove or cast doubt upon his theories of ontology, then we're going to view this through utilitarian consequentialist lens, even if it's not perfect. So any argument he makes on utilitarianism is based and promoted off the fact that he's winning ontology, and I'll get to that on case. On to the first advantage. One, he accepts an argument that he doesn't interact with the arguments I'm making. One, he says that conflict is more likely. However, Horowitz and Lewandowski is on my side. That says that when we have a universal army, a citizen army changes the way that we fundamentally look at warfare and destroys militaristic culture. This is off the 1AC. And then two, on his no division, one, extend Dempsey and extend Sandel. These are two important cuts in the state that says the authorization of the military is the cause for things like marginalization and sending into interventionist war, which means that the act is an abstraction away from interventionist warfighting and putting people on the front line just because of authorization. He doesn't interact with these arguments. And on his Rep's argument, one, Rep's not first undermined. We're talking about the consequences of simulated action. I'm winning this because I wrote this on the K page about ontology. However, even if you buy that representations are first, I'm not going to disadvantage, which means that you can cross the flow, or and which means that it's a wash, so you can't vote on this. However, even if you do buy that representations matter and that I should lose for extinction, any risk that I win that ontology isn't real or ontology does not exist in the status quo is not a reason why you can vote on this. On to the K. He makes a major mistake in this round. He extends the line that putting black people on the front lines is uniquely bad. However, this is the status quo. Look to Sandal 2K and the 1AC. That says that right now, the military is represented of people who cannot afford to wait their out. It is overrepresented by marginalized people who conscript out of economic necessity. This means that the K is the status quo. The impacts of the K, where we send people on the front lines, is happening right now in the status quo, which means that it's try or die for the affirmative as long as I win any claims about ontology, which means that any abstraction away from a world where people are conscripted out of economic necessity is a reason to vote affirmative. On to parentology. He majorly misuncovers that the parentology. He says that political ontology is this. However, there's a huge reason to vote after. The way they describe the black body as ontologically dead just frames it in a way that seems it's impossible to cover. They ontologize blackness and make it holistic. Anti-blackness is not fixed society. That's motive. If we win that the policy can be good, we can win that the all cannot solve and the plan can be good, which means that I don't need to make a permutation to win or any risk of offense because he miscovers paleontology. The way that he frames blackness and the way that he says that it is ontological cannot escape the way that he frames it in context to whiteness. For black people, there is social life and social death, which means that his alt, he concedes that there is social life. He says that there's a political ontology that all that matters. However, even if that is true, then the alt cannot solve. Because if he concedes that there is social life and social death, then burning it down does no good, and burning down is a bad thing in itself. Which means that the round breaks down pretty simply. You can vote on any risk of offense on the AF because I have proven that the way he ontologizes blackness is only going to reify dominant structures by removing its context from whiteness. So even if you buy that things like political ontology is all that matters, the way that he frames it is inherently bad because it destroys any chance that we can abstract away from any understanding as a black person and a political entity distinct from a white supremacy. He mishandles this in the 2NC, in the 2NR, which means that I disprove his theories of ontology, which means that any risk of AF offense is a reason to vote AF. Good job.
Round 6 pairing, sir.
Yeah.
Does anyone have a picture?
Hindu, 22 for you.
Grapevine.
Okay, and Scott Phillips.
Wait, who are my judges?
Like Ace
John and
players.
John and Rodrigo. You are flight A, and you're judging Brianna and Truth. Mr. Alston, would you also like to know?
Sure. Also, can I see the parents?
Yes, yeah.
Thanks. This one. Thank you.
Oh, is it? I think that one. That's great.
Pecan.
Where's Pecan?
It's down there.
Pecan.
Don't worry, we don't disclose, correct?
No, we don't disclose, we just say it.
Do you want to
Basically.
Here, you can just check.
Oh, just read framework. Yeah. This is one-off framework and a bunch of cap and case terms, but you can read it. Your teammate, your framework, but it dropped like a bunch of case terms and critiques. Oh yeah, I called you Alex during a row.
Yeah. And you was like, how could I prep for your F? And Nick was like, I talked to Alex about it. And you was like, what are you talking about?
You're a good block file, Alex. That's a good answer.
Are you ready? Or no?
Oh, yeah, I can write it down later. Just, put in. No, just write it down.
You want to go first?
Wait, where's?
Oh, come.
Yeah.
Come.
I'm gonna grab. You're ready. Sorry. Alright, so no decision.
Okay.
Comments. I'll keep this short. I think like there's like a lot of areas where I think comparison is lacking in specific parts. I think the case debate is one example. I think this ontology debate is another example. I think both of these areas invite too much room for the judge to fill in stuff. For the negative though, like I think part of the problem is you just kind of expect me to fill in background knowledge about the critique for you. Just like, oh, you kind of know what Wilderson's theory of ontology is and like why anti-blackness is ontological.
Yeah.
That's sort of explaining it a little bit more for someone that like thinks that even if they do have some cursory background knowledge, that it's still your job to sort of explain that a little bit more. So that's the sort of general thing that makes me sit here for a while, is just trying to fill in some of the like how much background sort of knowledge about critique can I fill?
So like obviously like explanation is like really important, and like so did you just think it was more strategic then to just collapse into 200 just to case turns and like the reps, the materials and this stuff and then framing?
I doubt that would have been the strategic choice. Like, I think part of it is just like a significant portion of this 2R seems like grandstanding to me. Like when you re-explain the Lawrence like tagline like about 6 or 7 times without sort of, you know, explaining more like the warrant, why is this, how does this weigh against the affirmative, what does this take out, like why does this like mean give it a neg sort of thing. But there's just like a ton of grandstanding, and I don't think there's like an in-depth like debate about a lot of the places that the app chooses to clash with you on.
Okay.
So for the affirmative, I think like part of it is just time crunch being the app, so it's not like I can blame you too much for it, but also just like picking the places where you are going to like concede some stuff so you can strategically spend more time on others.
Should I have conceded like one of the advantages in the winning out?
Yeah, I think you should have just conceded the second advantage. Like
Okay.
you had to answer the first one anyways, like so you might as well have just conceded it and spent more time doing stuff. Okay, that's the short version. I don't think I can say anything else without making it too obvious my decision. So.
All right, so a couple of things in terms of suggestions for both sides. The explanations are really important, and I think both sides needed to give better explanations in terms of the ontology versus parent ontology thing. I think that the affirmative needed to do a better job on the implications of parent ontology in the last speech, and I think that the affirmative needed to do a better job of the distinction between political ontology and ontology, because you keep using the word political ontology and like as opposed to ontology. So what's the difference, right? Yeah. And that has to be clear. I think that the affirmative should have a perm to okay, that would help give you a lot more leverage. I think that the negative has to again, those nuanced explanations become really important, and I think that really the only thing that you really needed to do was have a better understanding of what parentology was, because she's coming at you with something that you didn't seem like you were familiar with, and if you're going to want Wilderson, you need to really understand the difference. That's why I thought you were talking about political ontology, and I thought you were going to draw some type of.
I think like in the 2NR, I just kind of just wanted to go for like the case and the reps stuff.
Right. I mean, the case and the rep stuff is fine, but I think that especially. Right, especially in terms of just like especially in terms of what you're going for. But I think that I just think that there's potential for problems on the ontology versus parentology if you don't understand it and don't really like fully go like no.
Yeah.
Where I think the job was best, and there should have been more explanation, was there can be social life and social therapy at the same time, like the Sexton stuff, right?
Yeah,
like,
I actually had the Sexton card ready to read, but I just time-wise.
Right, in terms of like that explanation, like yes, you're like, what I'm arguing is not just this, it can mean this and this.
Yes, yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So you're actually arguing the same thing in terms of it's ontic versus ontological.
Yeah.
But, you know, that just needs to be finessed.
Of course.
Right.
Thank you.
But I think that the biggest, I think that for the affirmative, recognize the implication of certain arguments. Like if someone's saying that like we're a little bit racist, but that's okay. Like if you're being characterized like that, then you need to make sure that you jump back on that, right? And really that's about it. Unless you have any questions.